This is what remains of Wichita's old flick. Pardon the jacket, but it is cold down here in the subterranean chambers where we are about to show you Dr. Bloods Coffin. Directed by Sidney J Furie. Now, before you give up, it's because Sidney J Furie doesn't mean, well, it does, but stay with us just the same. But we are about to show Dr. Bloods Coffin. Hazel Court is our heroine tonight. One of her biggest fans, let's say, was Stephen King, who mentions her in his various novels. Bet you didn't know he wrote novels. He writes novels. We will not show his novels on the screen. Are you impressed thus far? Keep this in mind. It's written here, it must be true. In 2009, director Martin Scorsese placed Sidney J Furie's The Entity from 1982, not Dr. Bloods Coffin, no, The Entity on his list of the 11 scariest horror films of all time. I am not in a position to be sure that Dr. Bloods Coffin was not either number 10 or number 12 on that list, but it might not have been. Old flick. It was significant that he was sitting in a worn-out, battered old chair, wearing an extremely unfashionable sweater. I'm not exactly a, well, as you can see, I'm something of a fashion leader, but I wasn't back then. Oh yeah, there's the old flick sign. The one that, here, let's get some of the dust off that. Turned it sideways and it read very unfortunately for the first week or so we were on. We didn't realize what it read until they broadcast it. And it was too late to do anything about it, but, well, we survived it. It was on late at night, so we didn't get any complaints that I know of. I'm not a man of sartorial elegance, but even I objected to that sweater. It was so incredibly drab. And outside the window, there was a light that flashed red off, that you know said either dance hall or liquor store or something like that. Second floor, shabby little apartment, a man of no achievement whatsoever. Old flick had only one thing going for him, that he did know something about movies.
Welcome. I am Old Flick, of course, and I am welcoming you to Kansas' first time ever three-dimensional motion picture on television. And since I am here to represent the cultural and educational aspect of this venture, as well as to try to catch the creature from the Black Lagoon, I have assigned a couple of my friends to handle the more plebeian matter of showing you how to watch this movie. Now have your glasses ready and watch these people closely, because this is not like other movies on television, because this one is in 3D. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Now, earlier, I had done a somewhat similar series for Channel 10 of 14 Sherlock Holmes movies as a character named by John Froome, Dr. Greymatter. Dr. Greymatter was a very different matter. I did not realize at the time that I photographed, for some reason, looking like Nigel Bruce, or did back then. I don't think anybody realized that till we started broadcasting. Dr. Greymatter was a person of some sophistication. He wore a, I thought, rather elegant purple bathrobe. It was cheap, but it looked elegant. I think it was cheap anyway. If I recall correctly, it was one that was given to me by my folks. They were not in a position to buy expensive clothes, but it looked good. And he lived in a place that certainly did not indicate lower economic level, although it didn't necessarily indicate very high level either. But he showed no signs of poverty or deprivation. He was a man of some culture. He even spoke with my version of a British accent. It was supposed to be a British accent, and it was supposed to, as a matter of fact, be based somewhat on Nigel Bruce, sort of a Mr. Holmes. Mr. Holmes is a good friend of mine, very intelligent, you know, that kind of a thing. But that was not the vein that seemed to come natural to me. That's not what people generally put me in. I generally played people who were not spectacularly successful in life. The roles I had the most success with on stage were very much the same, with the possible exception of the narrator in Royal Hunt of the Sun. And even he was simply a soldier. He wasn't a general. But he was a man who was very proud of his achievements, although he admitted that he had caused more harm than good in the world. Writers. We don't always pay enough attention to writers, but if they didn't write the film, the director couldn't direct it, and the actor couldn't act it, and I couldn't introduce it, and you couldn't see it. So, the writer of tonight's film, Nathan Juran, Juran, wrote many other classic B horror movies. The Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. I never thought that was a horror movie. The First Men in the Moon. This sounds like science fiction to me. The Deadly Mantis. Now there. That was a horror movie. That was a horror movie. And 30 Million Miles to Earth. He wrote all that stuff, as well as Dr. Bloods Coffin. Now, you got to respect something like that.
Oh, I've got all snagged. I'll never catch the monster at this rate. But you can catch the monster, though. Just put your glasses on and stand by, because we're about to start the revenge of the creature. If I can ever get this reel cleared, I'll get my own revenge on somebody or other.
We shot them out at Channel 10, and we had discussions about this character. He was very closely related to my other later character, Old Flick. Both of them were very closely related to Archie Bunker, based on the notion of a person who was a very ordinary person, but who thought a good deal more of himself than that, but who had no real accomplishments in life. It's significant that Leonard Kratsloe, the potato chip man, for instance, only had this one thing that made his life worthwhile, was potato chips. He had one friend named Calvin that was mentioned. Otherwise, there was no social life, no profession, no achievement of any kind attributed to Leonard Kratsloe. But his life was made worthwhile because he was the world's greatest connoisseur of potato chips, and he had found the greatest potato chip in all the world, the Stay Crisp potato chip. Who invented Kratsloe? I don't know. The name, somebody told me, had been used by somebody like Shelley Berman or some such person. At the time, we didn't know. We didn't know where the name came from. It just sounded like a sort of a second-rate person with a big ego. We did have quite a bit of discussion, a lot of talk about who Old Flick was supposed to be called. I remember he had names like Mr. All Night Long was one of them, for instance, and I can't remember what the rest of them were. But they all basically were related to Archie Bunker, all in the family, except for Dr. Greymatter, who was related really, I suppose, really consciously to Nigel Bruce. I didn't know I would look like Nigel Bruce, but I knew I was acting a little like Nigel Bruce.
Ladies and gentlemen, Leonard Kratsloe. His first public appearance in what, 20 years?
Erickson says you're just a bunch of low-brow hooligans and he won't have anything more to do with you. He went home.
Your prize, and Mr. Potato Head watch. Okay, what are the only written words to appear in Star Wars? A, Death Star, or B, Tractor Beam? The only written words that appear in the movie.
The whole introduction to read.
He knows? Well, how many people know?
Me.
Okay.
Erickson said he knew these rules would be too hard for this group.
The grand prize, actually kind of cool, is a antique Davy Crockett poster. Thank you, Killian Enterprises, for the trivia contest. It says turn card. Turn card. Yes.
I suppose you all noticed it was a Daniel Boone poster.
Thank you, Leonard.
I don't see the level of appreciation out there for the work of Sidney J Furie that he may have earned tonight. So listen to this. Stanley Kubrick was a big fan of The Boys in Company C in 1978, made by Sidney J Furie, and he cited Sidney J Furie's war movie as the direct inspiration for Full Metal Jacket in 1987. So let's warm up a little bit out there. Show some respect. I hear people out there uttering skepticism as to whether the information I give you is accurate. It is all printed right here, and if you want to see it in print, just come on down to the studio and we'll show you. For instance, Kieran Moore, the star of tonight's film, who plays Dr. Blood, also played the hero in another classic sci-fi film, The Day of the Triffids, where he was forced to battle flesh-eating plants. I don't know whether we're ever going to have that one, but he did it, though. He did it.
Well, old Flick can't find the creature from the Black Lagoon, but you can find the Revenge of the Creature in 3D right here in your home this Saturday at 6. If you get your 3D glasses at your local Quick Shop and tune into Cake TV 10, where you are now, Saturday at 6. I'll be hosting if I don't catch cold. So get your 3D glasses at the Quick Shop and be with us Saturday at 6.
But the big chance was Leonard Kratsloe. At our peak, I was told we were playing in 7 cities. I got mail from both Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Austin, Texas, friends of mine who had seen me selling what everybody identified as daisy clover potato chips and this potato chip and that potato chip. They knew who Leonard Kratsloe was, but they did not know the name of the chip, which I think may have been one of the reasons that, well, we built the product up. They were doing good business, so they sold and got out of the business, and that was the end of that chance for me to make fame and fortune. So here I still am in Wichita, which is probably just, well, I don't know where I'd be any better off. I don't know where I would have lived a better life anyway. I don't know that more money would have done me any good. And when I was doing Old Flick, I learned enough about what it is to be a celebrity to realize it is no fun to be a celebrity. You can't go to a garage sale. You can't go to movies. I'd go to a movie. I'd sit down. One day a guy came down, sat down next to me. He said, "Hey, you come here to see the movie, huh?" And I told him, "Well, you know, once the lights are out, there's not much else you can do in this theater except watch the movie." So he got up and left, and no doubt groused about how snobby celebrities are. But celebrities have no privacy. They stay home all the time. They can't go anywhere, and they turn into Michael Jacksons and the later Elvis Presleys and so on. I got just a little tiny touch of that, enough to realize that I would prefer not to be recognizable. Unfortunately, people who don't know my face, and they don't anymore now I'm off television, know my voice. I get identified by voice all over the place.
What kind of stuff will you find at the yard store? Anything from hardware to helmets. If your daughter needs luggage or your son needs camping gear, the best place to look for it at the yard. The yard has so much stuff you can spend days here. Work clothes, motors, aluminum, steel. It's all mixed together, but they'll give you a deal. Tools, they got them. All sizes and kinds. The yard's just chock full of all sorts of finds. Some of it's surplus or been used before. Yet you hear folks exclaim as they're leaving the store, "We found it at the yard!"
Hazel Court, who you must by now have noticed, playing Nurse Parker in tonight's film. Got her start as a horror queen, playing the role as Elizabeth in The Curse of Frankenstein in 1957. Now, you look it up. That was an important film. Curse of Frankenstein, 1957, Hazel Court, and we've got her here with us tonight. I hope you appreciate the things we do. Roger Corman, whom people of this series are surely familiar with, directed Hazel Court in 5 movies, including Premature Burial and The Mask of the Red Death. Like other scream queens of the era, it says right here, Court's roles often relied on her cleavage and her ability to shriek in fear and die horrible deaths. I think she could have got along on any one of the 3, especially one of them. Don't you?
All right, now, we saw that reaction when he said, attracted attention. We saw what you people... We're not that kind of television, you know. Anyway, I really don't think that the creature would be at all interested in Laurie Nelson. You know, I'll bet he would think he was sort of soft and squishy to the touch and pale and blonde as to color, you know. And she had long hair and no scales, none of those pretty little scales. And most of all, she doesn't have any of that nice, sensual coat of slime that keeps bodies from rotting when they live underwater, you know. Yes, indeed. However, racial memory of the time when he was a fully terrestrial creature, you see. That could account for his attraction to Laurie Nelson. More and more, I think I'm right. This creature was terrestrial and moved back into the water. But anyway, the King Kong syndrome, you know, that animals are much in love with people, is very flattering to people. But I don't think it fits the facts very well. I don't think the buffalo and the blue whale and the dodo bird and the passenger pigeon and the whooping crane, I don't think they care much for people. Maybe the brown rat. We've been pretty good for brown rats.
We had high hopes for King Kong Fu. Even Mary Jane Teal, who saw just the stills, said the production values looked really good. And I, of course, was only involved in a couple of scenes. I didn't have any dealings with major cast members except for Ballet himself, and he was, of course, in his gorilla costume. We were working indoors, fortunately, where there was air conditioning, but between shots, he would lie down and take off the gloves of his gorilla costume, and the sweat would run out, not drip, but run in a steady stream out of the end of those sleeves. He was not in a state to be particularly sociable. How he survived the outdoor shooting in July, I haven't the foggiest idea. I was told that his doctor had told him, don't do this, you'll kill yourself. But he survived somehow. But I didn't have much dealings with him. And the rest of the cast wasn't there. There was one short scene I was involved in out at the zoo. But it was very short. I had very nothing to do. The big thing about that is I did get to see the heroine in her bikini, and she looked very good. But I didn't really... Well, I must have met her, because I met her some years later, and she recognized me. But that may have been the way people always recognized me, it seemed like. I never had the highest hopes for the thing, really, as far as my profession is concerned. I had, by that time, long ago abandoned any notion that I was going to become some kind of a, you know, theatrical or film or television phenomenon. And I did it mostly just for fun and had a pretty good time doing it. Every time I have seen it since then, I've had the misfortune of seeing it 3 or 4 times, it seems to me my performance is worse. I never thought it was good. When I first saw it, I didn't know how bad it was. Now I'm getting some kind of an inkling just how bad it was. According to her friend Ingrid Pitt, Hazel Court was Hammer Films' first major star. This woman is part of history, and we are providing her to unite, free of charge. And that was Dr. Bloods Coffin. Hazel Court, Kieran Moore, presented to you by All That Remains of Wichita's not quite legendary, old flick. Old flick. Old flick.
You are watching the Basement Sublet of Horror.